Welcome to the Rev and the Rav, a program of interfaith dialogue and discovery. My name is Rabbi Daniel Lehmann, president of Hebrew College.
And I'm Nick Carter, president of Andover Newton Theological School. Welcome.
Today we're going to discuss a rare occurrence in both American and Jewish history, and that is the confluence of Thanksgiving and Chanukkah, which takes place this year. The first night of Chanukkah is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then on Thanksgiving night, it's the second night of Chanukkah. The last time this happened was in 1888, and it's not scheduled to happen again for another 79,000 years.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll put it on my Outlook schedule. Well, Danny, since the chances are that we won't be around for the next time, we ought to take advantage of this one. But maybe we ought to get our bearings straight here a little bit. Since Hanukkah is happening so much earlier, usually Christians expect to hear about Hanukkah as Advent arrives
In December, yeah.
in December. So help us both maybe just get our bearings on, so what is Hanukkah again, and why is there such variation in its calendar?
So, of course, the Jewish calendar is on a lunar calendar, and this year, for instance, the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, took place just after Labor Day,
Right,
so it was
yeah.
very early. And that happens, and then there's a leap month added in the spring, which readjusts the lunar calendar to be more in line with the solar seasons. So we're in a particular period in the cycle in which the Jewish holidays are coming earlier in the solar calendar this year. But Hanukkah as a holiday really focuses on the emancipation of the Jews living in Israel during the Hellenistic period, and the Greeks took over control over Jerusalem and introduced all kinds of non-Jewish idolatrous practice into the temple, and there was a Jewish revolt against that, both in order to gain back their sovereignty, but also to cleanse and purify the temple. And there was a victory by the smaller Jewish army.
And a miracle.
And a miracle of the oil, though interestingly, in the historic books that we have that recount this Hanukkah story, the oil miracle doesn't really occur in those narratives. So the oil miracle actually is found in rabbinic literature hundreds of years later recounting the story, and that miracle was that they found a small vial of purified oil that had the seal of the high priest, because they could only use special oil to light the menorah, the candelabra in the temple, and that small vial of oil that should have lasted only for a day ended up lasting for 8 days, during which they could make new purified oil. But in many ways, it's the military victory, it's the sense of sovereignty, of regaining control over their own destiny. And that's why in Israel today, for instance, Hanukkah is a secular holiday that has all kinds of overtones in terms of the contemporary Israeli state and military prowess, and those elements which tend not to be the focus of Hanukkah in the diaspora, where the miracle of the oil, the lighting of candles during this darker period of the year tends to dominate.
Well, so when Hanukkah falls on Thanksgiving, does the Jewish community try and differentiate and separate from Thanksgiving in America, or how do you play that?
Well, we haven't had a lot of experience with this, and I'm not sure what they did in 1888. But in this day and age, there's a whole phenomenon happening in the Jewish community called Thanksgivika.
I love it. Thanksgiving.
This hybrid of Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, and there are websites and special prayers and special services. Again, because this only happens
It's not
quite rarely.
Hanukkah-giving.
Right.
Yeah,
the thanks comes first.
Right.
And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that amalgamation of those two. I think it's quite interesting because there is a part of this phenomenon of Hanukkah and Thanksgiving taking place at the same time, which I think emphasizes some common elements of the holiday. So, for instance, Thanksgiving, as we all know, is a home-centered holiday.
Yes.
People go home, there's a Thanksgiving meal, which is very home-centered. Hanukkah is the only holiday in the Jewish calendar where the home is actually the focus of the holiday.
Really?
Because the commandment, the rabbinic commandment to light the lights of the Hanukkah menorah, the Chanukiah, the way that is stated in rabbinic literature is the obligation is on a person and the household. So the obligation is on the household, and the minimal way of fulfilling that obligation is one light, one candle, or one oil light per household per night of Hanukkah.
Really?
We don't do that. We light one
Yeah.
and then two and then three, and every individual tends to light their own. But the basic commandment is one light per household. And there's really no other holiday which has that household focus. In Hebrew, it's ner ish ubeito. It's the lighting of the candle by the person and the household. So that common home-centeredness is very prevalent in both holidays. And in fact, Hanukkah is one of the most observed holidays among American Jews, Passover being number one and Hanukkah being number two. And Thanksgiving obviously is a very well-celebrated holiday. Interestingly, they diverge, and I've often said that Jews need to learn something from Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is one night, one day, one night, and it's over. Hanukkah is 8.
Right.
You know, many of our holidays are 7 days or 8 days. So there's something short and sweet about Thanksgiving that is very powerful and we can learn from. On the other hand, I've always thought that Americans could learn something from the Jewish holidays, because if you think about Thanksgiving and you think about July 4th, neither of them have a ritualized narrative.
It's true.
And interestingly, Hanukkah has a narrative in the book of Maccabees, which is not a part of the Hebrew Bible. And we don't read it ritually on Hanukkah. In most communities, the book of Maccabees is not ritually read, but there is a text that is ritually celebrated on Hanukkah, and that is Hallel, which is a series of psalms that are recited and sung on most Jewish holidays. But Hanukkah, that series of psalms has special prominence. And it seemed to me that those psalms, which are psalms of thanksgiving and praise and hallelujah, is an appropriate set of texts for Thanksgiving, because it's really about praising and thanking God for for what He has bestowed upon us. And I think that notion of having a ritualized text that helps express the core values of the day is something that those American holidays could benefit from.
Yeah. You know, it's, of course, every church does include Thanksgiving as part of its celebrations. And the very nature of Thanksgiving, or the very definition of it, is thanking God for sustaining the pilgrims, and there is a nice orientation for, even as a whole nation, to pause to thank God for what blessings we have, and to do so in a family-oriented setting. It's really delightful to watch the various expressions, but there is a free form to, certainly in Christian traditions, about how to play that out and what kinds of things get said and what sort of rituals evolve.
Right.
No fixed ritual. Right. Text usually from the Psalms, or other prayers of thanksgiving that occur throughout the Bible, but no fixed set of choices.
Right. See, I think it's going to be actually interesting this year that Hanukkah is connected to Thanksgiving and not to Christmas. Because I think for the non-Jewish community, and maybe even for the Jewish community, it's going to emphasize the distinctiveness of Hanukkah, that it's really not the Jewish parallel to Christmas. The fact that it's occurring with Thanksgiving says, oh, maybe Hanukkah is something else. And in fact, I think it shares more with Thanksgiving, both in terms of that praise and thanks of God, but also the notion of religious freedom, which is really what Hanukkah is about. Hanukkah is about we need to be in control of our own religious destiny. And the Assyrian Greeks were constraining and forcing us into other patterns. And when you think about the pilgrims and you think about the religious freedom
Absolutely.
they were seeking, there's a lot of parallels there.
Oh, that religious freedom is so important, and you would find great support and a chorus of amens or amens from the Christian community about that separation of church and state, religious freedom, critical issues. And actually, I do envy that sense in which the holiday gets out of the cycle to really go back and say, so what is this about?
Right.
I think that's one of the challenges for religious holidays for every tradition, particularly if you are the dominant religion of society, is the society takes over. The culture takes over your holiday and puts its own stuff. It's like, so Christians struggle with Santa Claus at Christmas and the Easter Bunny at Easter, and I see that too when you look at celebrations of Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or other things that are all begin to take on a flavor of semi-Christmas.
Right.
And in society, it's hard to say, no, this is a tradition that has a different root and a different meaning. I was going to ask you about the exchange of gifts at Hanukkah, and is that an ancient practice, or is it much more contemporary and much more American?
Yeah, I think it's more American and Christian influenced. There's a notion of kind of playing games and kind of festive celebrations on Hanukkah, but not gift-giving per se. Interestingly, the holiday that we have a specific ritual of gift-giving is later on in the spring, Purim, the holiday which celebrates Mordecai and Esther and that whole narrative, the book of Esther. That we have a gift-giving tradition, but not on Hanukkah. And it's interesting. I think there probably will be more American Jews celebrating Hanukkah this year because of the overlap with Thanksgiving. You know, because they'll be home celebrating Thanksgiving, and it will be the second night of Hanukkah. So Hanukkah will get a boost out of the fact, I think, that it overlaps with Thanksgiving. But it will be different because the tension between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and as you said, kind of the need to differentiate it, will be much easier this year. Sure. Because again, I think the overlap with Thanksgiving is more natural.
Yeah, well, and it's true. It's hard to imagine a religious leader that doesn't struggle with how do I put meaning back into our religious holidays? How do I help my congregants rediscover what this holiday is all about? There's just about every Christian minister says, how do I get Christ back into Christmas? In terms of Santa Claus and all the other stuff that's commercialized, and where do I find the spirituality again of it? And you really try and take advantage of those moments when they come. Now, once every 70,000 years is a little tough.
Well, I hope the Jewish community is going to take advantage of this rare opportunity to do something really unique in terms of the home celebrations and what takes place in synagogues, because the overlap between the holidays and the opportunity to think about the American and Jewish identities and how they intersect is really a wonderful opportunity this year, and I'm looking forward to it, and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and a happy Hanukkah.
And for both of us, I'm Nick Carter from Andover, Newton. Happy Thanksgiving and peace.
Shalom.